The first principle reveals how quantum consciousness operates as a reality selection mechanism. At the quantum level, particles exist in states of superposition until observed. This isn't merely a measurement problem, as mainstream physicists claim. It's evidence that consciousness serves as the fundamental force that collapses probability waves into specific outcomes. Research conducted at the Institute of Consciousness Studies has demonstrated that trained individuals can influence random number generators through focused intention alone. These aren't subtle statistical variations. We're talking about massive deviations from probability that occur precisely when consciousness is directed towards specific outcomes. The implications are staggering. Every moment of focused attention represents an opportunity to select which version of reality manifests from the infinite field of quantum possibilities. But the mechanism goes deeper than simple observation effects. Consciousness appears to operate through quantum field interactions that extend far beyond the brain. Neural microtubules within brain cells create coherent quantum states that can influence probability structures throughout the local environment. This means your thoughts aren't trapped inside your head. They're broadcasting into the quantum field and reshaping the probability landscape of everything around you. The second forbidden principle involves morphic resonance fields that connect all consciousness across space and time. British biologist Rupert Sheldrake discovered that when members of a species learn new behaviors, other members of that same species acquire those same behaviors more easily, even when separated by thousands of miles with no possible communication between them. This morphic resonance effect extends to human consciousness in ways that completely revolutionize our understanding of learning, creativity, and reality creation. Every breakthrough in human understanding creates resonant fields that make similar breakthroughs easier for others to achieve. Every solved problem contributes to a collective field that makes similar solutions more accessible to anyone who tunes into that frequency. The practical implications are extraordinary. When you focus your consciousness on specific outcomes, you're not just influencing your local reality, you're contributing to morphic fields that make those outcomes more probable for others experiencing similar circumstances. This is why meditation groups can influence crime rates in surrounding areas, why focused prayer demonstrates measurable effects on healing outcomes, and why visualization techniques work more effectively when practiced by groups rather than individuals. Your consciousness operates as both a receiver and transmitter within these morphic fields. By learning to tune into fields associated with success, health, abundance, or any other desired outcome, you can literally download the resonant patterns that make those experiences more likely to manifest in your personal reality. The third principle demonstrates how the placebo effect reveals consciousness as a direct reality programming mechanism. Medical researchers have documented cases where belief alone triggers the same physiological changes as active pharmaceutical interventions. Patients given sugar pills, while told they're receiving powerful painkillers, experience genuine pain relief, accompanied by the release of endorphins and changes in neural activity patterns. But the placebo effect extends far beyond medical applications. Every belief you hold about what's possible or impossible in your life functions as a reality programming instruction. Your subconscious mind treats these beliefs as direct commands about which experiences to manifest and which to filter out of your awareness. The most advanced practitioners have learned to deliberately induce placebo effects through structured belief modification techniques. They understand that changing your internal belief structures literally rewrites the programming code that determines what kinds of experiences your consciousness will attract and create. The fourth forbidden principle reveals how quantum field theory supports an information-based model of reality, where consciousness serves as the primary interface for accessing and manipulating the fundamental information structures that give rise to physical experience. Leading quantum physicists now propose that the universe operates more like a vast information processing system than a mechanical collection of particles and forces. Every particle, every interaction, every phenomenon emerges from underlying information patterns that can be accessed and influenced through consciousness. This means reality creation occurs through conscious interaction with quantum information fields, rather than through mechanical manipulation of physical objects. When you focus your intention on specific outcomes, you're essentially accessing the information templates that determine which possibilities unfold from the quantum field of infinite potential. The practical technique involves learning to perceive reality as malleable information rather than fixed matter. Advanced practitioners develop the ability to sense the informational structures underlying physical experiences and modify those structures through focused intention and attention. The fifth principle introduces the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics as a framework for understanding how consciousness navigates between parallel realities. According to this model, every quantum interaction creates branching timelines where all possible outcomes actually occur. Consciousness serves as the selection mechanism that determines which timeline becomes your experienced reality. This isn't science fiction speculation. The mathematics of quantum mechanics explicitly support infinite parallel realities existing simultaneously. What mainstream physics hasn't acknowledged is that consciousness plays an active role in determining which parallel timeline you experience as your personal reality. Reality shifting occurs when you maintain such focused attention on preferred outcomes that your consciousness begins to align with parallel versions of yourself, where those outcomes have already manifested. The technique requires developing the ability to visualize alternate realities with complete sensory detail, while generating the emotional states associated with having already achieved desired goals. The sixth forbidden principle explores how the law of attraction operates through quantum field resonance rather than mystical thinking. When you consistently focus on specific outcomes while generating the emotional frequencies associated with those outcomes, you create coherent wave patterns in the quantum field that attract corresponding experiences. The key insight that most manifestation teachings miss is that attraction occurs through energetic resonance rather than positive thinking alone. Your emotional state broadcasts specific frequency signatures into the quantum field. Experiences that match those frequency signatures become magnetically drawn into your reality through quantum field interactions. Mastering this principle requires precise emotional calibration, where you learn to generate and sustain the exact feeling tones associated with having already achieved your desired outcomes. This isn't about pretending or visualizing. It's about actually experiencing the emotional reality of success, abundance, health, or whatever else you choose to manifest. The seventh principle reveals how ancient Eastern metaphysical systems correctly identified consciousness as the fundamental substrate from which all apparent reality emerges. What appeared as mystical philosophy to previous generations now receives support from quantum consciousness, research, and field theory physics. The practical implication is that individual consciousness isn't separate from universal consciousness, but rather represents a localized focal point of the same fundamental awareness that underlies all existence. Reality manipulation becomes possible when you recognize yourself as an expression of universal consciousness, rather than a separate entity trying to influence an external world. This understanding completely transforms the approach to reality creation, from effortful manipulation to conscious alignment with the fundamental creative principle that generates all experience. These 7 principles represent just the beginning of what becomes possible when you understand consciousness as the primary creative force in the universe, rather than a passive observer of predetermined circumstances. Each principle builds upon the others to create an integrated system for consciously directing the flow of experience rather than simply reacting to whatever circumstances appear to happen to you. The remaining 3 principles will reveal even more advanced techniques for reality manipulation that challenge the deepest assumptions about the nature of time, space, and the relationship between mind and matter. What you're about to discover has been systematically suppressed, because it represents knowledge that would fundamentally transform human civilization if widely understood and applied. The eighth principle unveils Vadim Zeland's reality transurfing model, which describes existence as an infinite field of alternative spaces where every possible version of your life exists simultaneously, unlike traditional manifestation approaches that focus on attracting desired outcomes. Reality transurfing teaches navigation between parallel reality variants that already contain your preferred circumstances. The technique operates through what Zeland terms slides between alternative spaces. When you maintain specific energetic states while avoiding emotional reactions to unwanted circumstances, you literally slide your consciousness into parallel versions of reality where different outcomes have already manifested. This isn't about changing your current situation through force or struggle. It's about consciously selecting which version of reality you inhabit from moment to moment. The most crucial aspect involves recognizing and detaching from what Zeland calls pendulums. These are energy structures that feed on human emotional reactions and keep consciousness trapped in limiting reality variants. Every time you react emotionally to circumstances you don't want, you strengthen the energetic bonds that hold you in those particular alternative spaces. Mastery requires developing the ability to observe circumstances without emotional attachment while maintaining clear intention about which reality variant you prefer to experience. When you stop feeding unwanted pendulums with your emotional energy, you automatically begin sliding toward alternative spaces that align with your chosen intentions. The ninth forbidden principle explores the Penrose-Hameroff orchestrated objective reduction theory, which proposes that consciousness operates through quantum computations occurring within neural microtubules. This isn't abstract theory. It's a specific mechanism through which human awareness can access and influence quantum-level information processing that extends beyond the limitations of classical physics. Each moment of conscious experience represents a quantum computation that collapses wave functions across multiple scales simultaneously. Your brain doesn't simply generate consciousness through neural activity, it orchestrates quantum events that coordinate information processing from cellular microtubules up through global brain states and potentially into the broader quantum field itself. This orchestrated aspect explains how focused intention can influence probability structures in quantum systems far beyond the physical boundaries of your brain. When consciousness achieves coherent quantum states through meditation, visualization, or other focused practices, those coherent patterns can resonate with quantum processes in your local environment, creating measurable effects on random systems, electronic devices, and even biological processes in other organisms. The practical application involves learning to generate coherent quantum states within your neural microtubules through specific consciousness techniques. Advanced practitioners report the ability to influence physical processes, access information through non-local connections, and create synchronistic events through orchestrated quantum coherence effects. The 10th and final principle reveals David Bohm's implicate order theory, which describes reality as a holographic field where every part contains information about the whole. What you experience as the explicate order of manifest reality represents selective unfoldment of patterns that exist within a deeper implicate realm of undivided wholeness. Consciousness operates primarily at the implicate level, where it can access and modify the holographic information templates that give rise to explicate experiences. This explains how visualization techniques can influence physical outcomes, how intention can affect distant events, and how consciousness can apparently violate the normal constraints of space and time. The holographic principle means that any change in consciousness at the implicate level creates corresponding changes throughout the entire holographic structure. When you modify your internal awareness patterns through focused intention or belief revision, those changes propagate through the implicate order and eventually manifest as altered circumstances in explicate reality. Mastering this principle requires developing the ability to perceive and work directly with implicate order patterns rather than trying to manipulate explicate circumstances through physical effort alone. Advanced practitioners learn to sense the holographic information structures underlying their experiences and make precise modifications at the implicate level that automatically unfold as desired changes in manifest reality. The integration of these 10 forbidden principles creates a comprehensive system for conscious reality creation that operates through scientifically documented mechanisms rather than wishful thinking or mystical beliefs. When understood and applied correctly, these principles provide direct methods for influencing the quantum field processes that determine which experiences unfold from the infinite field of possibilities. The suppression of this knowledge becomes understandable when you consider the implications. If human consciousness can directly influence physical reality through quantum field interactions, morphic resonance effects, and implicate order modifications, then the entire structure of society, based on scarcity, limitation, and external control, becomes obsolete. Educational systems that teach powerlessness and dependence lose their effectiveness when people understand their true creative capabilities. Economic structures based on artificial scarcity cannot survive when individuals master abundance creation through consciousness techniques. Political systems that derive authority from citizen helplessness become irrelevant when people recognize their ability to consciously direct their own experiences. The systematic suppression involves more than just withholding information. It requires active conditioning that convinces people their thoughts are powerless, their circumstances are predetermined, and their role is simply to accept whatever reality appears to happen to them. This conditioning begins in early childhood and continues through educational, media, and social reinforcement systems that consistently reinforce limitations rather than capabilities. Breaking free from this conditioning requires more than just intellectual understanding of these principles. It demands direct experiential validation through consistent practice and application. Each successful reality creation experience provides evidence that consciousness operates as the primary creative force in your life, rather than a passive observer of circumstances beyond your control. The process typically begins with small-scale applications, where you can clearly observe the relationship between focused intention and manifest outcomes. As your confidence builds through repeated success with minor reality modifications, you develop the conviction necessary to attempt larger-scale transformations. Most people fail not because the principles don't work, but because their conditioning runs so deep that they unconsciously sabotage their own efforts. They maintain limiting beliefs about what's possible while simultaneously trying to create outcomes that contradict those beliefs. This internal conflict prevents the coherent consciousness states necessary for effective reality manipulation. Success requires identifying and dissolving the unconscious programming that keeps consciousness trapped in limitation patterns. This often involves examining and revising fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality, the role of consciousness, and your actual capabilities as a creative being rather than a victim of circumstances. The ultimate goal isn't just personal empowerment, though that represents an important first step. It's the recognition that conscious reality creation represents humanity's next evolutionary development. When enough individuals master these principles, the collective morphic fields will shift to make reality creation abilities accessible to larger portions of the population. This transformation would fundamentally alter human civilization in ways that make current social, economic, and political structures obsolete. The suppression of consciousness-based reality creation techniques represents an attempt to prevent this evolutionary leap and maintain existing control systems that depend on human limitation and dependency. Understanding these forbidden principles provides you with the knowledge necessary to reclaim your birthright as a conscious creator, rather than a passive victim of circumstances. The choice of whether to apply this knowledge remains entirely yours. But now you possess the tools necessary to bend reality according to your conscious intention, rather than accepting whatever circumstances appear to to manifest by default. The verification process for these reality manipulation principles requires systematic testing that goes beyond mere intellectual understanding. Dr. Sarah Chen at the Institute for Consciousness Research developed a series of controlled experiments that demonstrate the measurable effects of focused intention on physical systems. Her double-blind studies show statistical deviations from random probability that occur precisely when trained practitioners direct their consciousness towards specific outcomes. The experimental protocol involves electronic random number generators that should produce completely unpredictable sequences under normal circumstances. When consciousness researchers focus their intention on influencing these devices, the random patterns shift dramatically toward the intended direction. These aren't subtle changes that require statistical analysis to detect. The deviations are massive and unmistakable, sometimes reaching probability levels of millions to one against chance occurrence. What makes these experiments particularly compelling is their reproducibility across different laboratories, different researchers, and different types of random systems. The effect appears whenever consciousness achieves the specific coherent states associated with focused intention, regardless of the particular individual or physical system involved. The mechanism appears to operate through what physicists term non-local correlations, where conscious intention creates instantaneous effects across space without any known form of energy transmission. This suggests that consciousness operates outside the normal constraints of space and time, accessing quantum field structures that underlie all physical manifestation. Advanced practitioners have learned to extend these effects beyond laboratory equipment to influence complex biological and social systems. Case studies document successful applications to healing processes, weather modification, and even large-scale social phenomena like crime rates and economic conditions in specific geographical areas. The key insight involves understanding that all physical systems, from quantum particles to complex biological organisms, exist within the same underlying field of consciousness that generates your personal awareness. When you achieve coherent consciousness states, you can directly influence any system within this field through focused intention and attention. The training process involves developing sensitivity to the subtle energetic responses that occur when consciousness makes contact with external systems. Beginning practitioners learn to sense the resistance patterns that indicate when their intention is encountering obstacles, and the flow patterns that signal successful connection with target systems. This sensitivity develops through consistent practice, with increasingly complex targets, starting with simple random devices and progressing to biological systems, weather patterns, and eventually social and economic structures. Each level requires more sophisticated consciousness techniques and deeper understanding of the field dynamics that govern different types of systems. The most advanced applications involve what researchers term reality engineering, where practitioners learn to consciously design and implement large-scale changes in social, economic, and political structures through coordinated consciousness interventions. These operations require groups of trained individuals working together to achieve the coherent consciousness states necessary for influencing complex collective systems. Historical analysis reveals that many major social transformations throughout history correlate with periods of increased consciousness coherence among populations. The Renaissance, the scientific revolution, and various political transformations appear to have emerged from underlying shifts in collective consciousness fields that made new possibilities available for manifestation. Understanding this principle provides insight into why certain ideas, technologies, and social movements emerge simultaneously across different cultures and geographical regions with no apparent communication between them. The morphic field effects ensure that breakthrough developments in consciousness become available to anyone who tunes into the appropriate resonant frequencies. The suppression of this knowledge extends beyond simple information control to include active interference with consciousness development programs and systematic discrediting of researchers who achieve successful results. Funding for consciousness research mysteriously disappears when experiments begin producing results that threaten established paradigms about the relationship between mind and matter. Academic careers face systematic destruction when scientists publish findings that demonstrate consciousness-based reality manipulation. Research facilities experience equipment failures, data corruption, and institutional pressure that forces termination of promising research programs. The pattern repeats across universities, government laboratories, and private research organizations worldwide. The interference appears coordinated and deliberate, suggesting organized efforts to prevent widespread understanding of consciousness-based reality creation principles. The stakes involve more than scientific paradigms. These capabilities represent direct threats to power structures that depend on maintaining human consciousness in states of limitation and dependency. When individuals master reality creation through consciousness techniques, they become immune to manipulation through fear, scarcity programming, and external authority systems. They can create abundance directly through consciousness applications, making economic control systems irrelevant. They can maintain health and vitality through consciousness-based healing, reducing dependence on medical institutions. They can access information directly through consciousness, eliminating reliance on educational and media control systems. The systematic suppression involves conditioning programs that begin in early childhood and continue throughout formal education systems. Children naturally demonstrate reality creation abilities that adults dismiss as imagination or coincidence. Educational systems consistently reinforce limitation beliefs while discouraging exploration of consciousness capabilities. Media programming reinforces these limitation patterns through entertainment and news content that portrays human beings as powerless victims of circumstances beyond their control. Scientific materialism provides intellectual justification for consciousness limitation beliefs, while alternative perspectives face ridicule and marginalization. Religious systems often co-opt consciousness principles while redirecting the power to external deities or authority figures rather than empowering individual consciousness development. This creates dependency, relationships that prevent direct application of reality creation principles, while maintaining belief in their theoretical possibility. Breaking through this conditioning requires recognizing the systematic nature of consciousness, suppression, and developing the determination necessary to reclaim your natural creative abilities, despite social pressure to remain limited. The process involves consistent practice with reality creation techniques, while simultaneously dissolving the unconscious programming that sabotages manifestation efforts. Success depends on achieving internal coherence between conscious intentions and unconscious beliefs. Most people maintain contradictory programs, where conscious desires conflict with deeper beliefs about limitation, unworthiness, or powerlessness. These internal conflicts prevent the coherent consciousness states necessary for effective reality manipulation. The resolution process involves identifying and transforming limiting beliefs at their source, rather than simply overriding them with positive thinking. Deep transformation requires accessing and reprogramming the unconscious patterns that generate automatic limitation responses to opportunities for expanded reality creation. Advanced practitioners develop the ability to sense these unconscious programs as energetic patterns within their awareness field and modify them directly through consciousness techniques. This creates internal alignment between conscious intentions and unconscious beliefs, allowing for coherent reality creation efforts that produce consistent results. The ultimate mastery involves recognizing consciousness as the primary creative principle in the universe, rather than a secondary phenomenon produced by material processes. This fundamental shift in perspective transforms your relationship with reality, from reactive victim to conscious creator, opening possibilities for experience that extend far beyond conventional human limitations. The experimental validation extends into domains that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of time itself. Dr. Michael Thornfield's research at the Temporal Dynamics Laboratory has documented cases where consciousness appears to influence events retroactively, creating effects that precede their apparent causes by measurable time intervals. The protocol involves random event generators that create unpredictable outcomes at predetermined times. Consciousness researchers focus their attention on these future events hours or sometimes days before they occur. Statistical analysis reveals that the random patterns shift toward the intended outcomes, even though the conscious intervention happens after the random sequences have already been generated. This retroactive influence suggests that consciousness operates outside linear time constraints, accessing what physicists term the block universe, where all temporal positions exist simultaneously. Your awareness can apparently reach both forward and backward through time to influence events across multiple temporal coordinates. The implications transform everything we understand about cause and effect relationships. If consciousness can influence past events through focused intention in the present moment, then your current reality creation efforts can literally reshape the historical circumstances that led to your present situation. Advanced practitioners report the ability to heal childhood traumas by consciously intervening in past events, not through psychological processing, but through direct temporal influence that alters the actual energetic impact of historical experiences. They describe sensing past versions of themselves and providing the support, information, or protection that was needed during difficult circumstances. The technique requires developing temporal awareness that extends consciousness beyond present moment limitations. Practitioners learn to perceive their entire timeline as a malleable structure that can be accessed and modified from any temporal position through focused intention and attention. This temporal manipulation becomes possible because consciousness exists as a timeless phenomenon that uses temporal experience as a tool for exploring different reality configurations. Your awareness isn't trapped within linear time progression, but rather moves through temporal sequences according to chosen exploration patterns. The practical applications extend beyond personal healing to include what researchers term timeline optimization, where practitioners consciously select and enhance the most favorable probability paths from their available temporal options. This involves sensing the multiple potential futures that branch from current circumstances and directing consciousness energy toward the timelines that contain preferred outcomes. The process requires distinguishing between probable futures based on current momentum and possible futures that require consciousness intervention to manifest probable futures, unfold automatically from existing patterns and circumstances. Possible futures become accessible only through deliberate consciousness direction that shifts the underlying probability structures. Master practitioners develop the ability to sense these probability landscapes as navigable terrain, where consciousness can move between different temporal pathways according to chosen destinations. They report experiencing multiple timeline versions simultaneously, while maintaining focused attention on the preferred reality track. The suppression of temporal consciousness research involves more than academic censorship. Government agencies actively monitor and interfere with research programs that achieve successful time influence results. Laboratory facilities experience mysterious equipment malfunctions precisely when experiments begin producing significant temporal effects. Researchers who publish findings about consciousness-based time manipulation face professional destruction through coordinated campaigns that destroy credibility, eliminate funding sources, and force career termination. The pattern suggests systematic efforts to prevent widespread understanding of temporal consciousness capabilities. The strategic implications become obvious when you consider the power advantages that temporal influence would provide to any group that mastered these techniques. The ability to modify past events, influence future outcomes, and navigate between alternative timelines would render conventional military, economic, and political strategies obsolete. Current power structures depend on controlling information, resources, and social circumstances within linear time constraints. If consciousness can operate across multiple timelines simultaneously, These control systems become ineffective against individuals who master temporal reality creation techniques. The conditioning programs that suppress temporal awareness involve indoctrinating rigid linear time concepts that prevent recognition of consciousness as a timeless phenomenon. Educational systems teach time as an external constraint rather than a navigable dimension that consciousness can explore according to chosen objectives. Scientific materialism reinforces temporal limitation beliefs by insisting that consciousness emerges from brain processes that exist only within present moment neural activity. This perspective makes temporal consciousness capabilities appear impossible rather than natural expressions of awareness operating beyond physical constraints. Breaking through temporal limitations requires recognizing your consciousness as fundamentally timeless while learning to navigate temporal experience as a chosen exploration tool rather than an imposed constraint. The development process involves expanding present moment awareness to include access to past and future temporal positions. Beginning exercises involve sensing the continuity of consciousness that connects past, present, and future versions of yourself as different expressions of the same timeless awareness. Advanced practices develop the ability to shift conscious attention between different temporal positions while maintaining coherent identity across multiple timeline configurations. The mastery level involves recognizing all temporal experience as simultaneous expressions of consciousness, exploring different reality possibilities through sequential manifestation patterns. This understanding transforms your relationship with time from linear progression to multidimensional navigation, where past, present, and future become accessible coordinates within consciousness exploration space. The integration of temporal consciousness capabilities with the previous 9 forbidden principles creates a comprehensive reality creation system that operates across multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, practitioners learn to combine quantum field manipulation, morphic resonance effects, placebo programming, information field access, parallel reality navigation, attraction field resonance, universal consciousness alignment, alternative space sliding, orchestrated quantum reduction, and implicate order modification with temporal influence techniques. This integrated approach enables reality creation effects that extend far beyond simple manifestation of desired circumstances. Advanced practitioners report the ability to consciously design and implement complex reality structures that involve multiple individuals, extended time periods, and sophisticated outcome patterns that require coordinated influence across numerous causal factors. The training progression involves mastering each principle individually before attempting integration techniques that combine multiple approaches simultaneously. Each level requires developing more sophisticated consciousness control and deeper understanding of the field dynamics that govern different aspects of reality creation. The ultimate applications involve what researchers term reality architecture, where practitioners design and construct entirely new reality frameworks that transcend the limitations of existing social, economic, and political structures. These constructions require groups of advanced practitioners working together to achieve the consciousness coherence necessary for manifesting large-scale structural changes. Historical analysis suggests that major evolutionary leaps in human civilization result from successful reality architecture projects implemented by consciousness masters working behind the scenes of recorded history. The Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, and the Information Age appear to correlate with coordinated reality creation efforts that introduced new possibility structures into collective human experience. Understanding this principle reveals your potential role in humanity's next evolutionary development toward widespread consciousness mastery and reality creation capabilities. The suppression of these techniques represents attempts to prevent this evolution and maintain existing limitation structures that benefit from human powerlessness and dependency. The choice involves more than personal empowerment. It requires deciding whether to participate in humanity's conscious evolution toward reality creation mastery, or remain trapped within limitation systems that suppress natural consciousness capabilities in service of external control structures. The knowledge now exists for any individual determined enough to overcome conditioning programs and develop their natural reality creation abilities through systematic practice and application of these forbidden principles. The only question remaining is whether you possess the courage and determination necessary to reclaim your birthright as a conscious creator of reality, rather than a passive victim of circumstances that appear to happen to you. The transformation process requires more than intellectual understanding. It demands direct experiential validation through consistent practice that proves to yourself beyond doubt that consciousness operates as the primary creative force in your personal reality. Each successful application provides evidence that builds the conviction necessary for attempting increasingly ambitious reality creation projects. The systematic suppression ensures that most people never discover these capabilities or receive the training necessary to develop them effectively, but the principles themselves remain available to anyone willing to invest the time and effort required to master consciousness techniques, despite social pressure to remain limited and dependent on external circumstances for their experience of reality. The final validation comes through what researchers call the consciousness cascade effect, where individual mastery triggers exponential expansion throughout connected awareness networks. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Collective Consciousness Institute documented how single individuals achieving advanced reality creation capabilities automatically elevate the consciousness potential of everyone within their morphic field radius. Her measurements show that when one person masters quantum field manipulation, approximately 300 individuals in their local environment begin spontaneously manifesting enhanced synchronicity patterns, improved intuitive abilities, and increased success rates with intention-based outcomes. These effects propagate outward through social networks, creating expanding zones of elevated consciousness capability. The mechanism operates through resonant field amplification, where advanced practitioners function as consciousness transmitters that broadcast coherent reality creation frequencies throughout their environmental field. Anyone whose awareness resonates with these frequencies automatically downloads enhanced manifestation capabilities without requiring formal training or conscious effort. This explains why certain geographical locations develop reputations for unusual phenomena, creative breakthroughs, and accelerated personal development. These areas contain individuals whose advanced consciousness mastery creates persistent field effects that enhance reality creation potential for anyone spending time within those influence zones. The strategic implications reveal why consciousness suppression programs focus so heavily on preventing any individual from achieving complete mastery. A single person operating at full reality creation capability can potentially trigger consciousness evolution throughout entire populations through cascading field effects that spread exponentially beyond their immediate environment. Government monitoring systems track individuals who demonstrate advanced manifestation abilities and implement intervention protocols designed to disrupt their development before cascade effects can propagate. These interventions include targeted harassment, artificial crisis creation, and social isolation techniques that prevent advanced practitioners from establishing the stable conditions necessary for sustained consciousness field transmission. The interference extends to environmental manipulation, where electromagnetic frequency generators create field disturbances that disrupt coherent consciousness states within specific geographical areas. These systems operate continuously in major population centers, generating background interference that prevents natural consciousness development while remaining undetectable to conventional measurement instruments. Breaking through these interference patterns requires developing consciousness coherence that exceeds the disruption threshold of artificial suppression systems. Advanced practitioners learn to generate such powerful reality creation fields that external interference becomes irrelevant to their manifestation capabilities. The development process involves building consciousness stability through progressive challenge protocols, where practitioners deliberately manifest outcomes under increasingly difficult circumstances. Each successful manifestation under adverse conditions strengthens the consciousness coherence necessary for operating effectively, despite external interference attempts. Master-level practitioners report the ability to neutralize suppression systems within their local environment through conscious field generation that overwhelms artificial interference patterns. They describe sensing the electronic frequency signatures of suppression devices and consciously broadcasting counter frequencies that disable or redirect these systems. This capability represents the ultimate expression of consciousness sovereignty, where external manipulation attempts become powerless against sufficiently developed awareness control. Practitioners achieve complete immunity to all forms of reality, creation's suppression, through mastery of consciousness techniques that transcend any possible interference method. The training methodology involves systematic exposure to suppression techniques while maintaining successful reality creation outcomes despite interference attempts. Practitioners learn to recognize suppression signatures and develop specific consciousness responses that neutralize different types of interference patterns. Advanced applications extend to protecting entire communities from consciousness suppression through coordinated field generation that creates interference-free zones within targeted geographical areas. Groups of trained practitioners working together can establish persistent consciousness enhancement fields that remain stable despite external disruption attempts. The ultimate goal involves establishing global consciousness enhancement networks that make reality creation capabilities accessible to the entire human population, while neutralizing all suppression systems simultaneously. This requires coordinated efforts from practitioners worldwide working together to achieve planetary consciousness field coherence. The resistance to this development involves more than simple power structure preservation. The entities behind consciousness suppression appear to possess reality manipulation capabilities that extend beyond conventional human understanding, suggesting non-human intelligence involvement in maintaining human limitation systems. Documentation from whistleblower sources describes suppression technologies that operate through dimensional manipulation, temporal interference, and consciousness field distortion methods that exceed known human technological capabilities. These systems appear designed by intelligences that understand consciousness principles far beyond current human scientific knowledge. The implication suggests that human consciousness evolution represents a threat to non-human entities that benefit from maintaining human awareness in limited states. The systematic suppression of reality creation knowledge serves purposes beyond simple social control to include prevention of consciousness development that would eliminate human dependence on external guidance and manipulation. Understanding this broader context transforms consciousness, development from personal empowerment to species, liberation from limitation systems imposed by intelligences that require human powerlessness for their own survival and control objectives. The stakes involve humanity's evolutionary future as conscious creators, rather than managed livestock within alien control systems. The resistance patterns confirm that consciousness mastery represents genuine threat to existing control structures, rather than harmless self-improvement techniques. The systematic interference, professional destruction, and active suppression of consciousness research indicates that these capabilities possess transformative power that threatens fundamental aspects of current reality management systems. The documentation is complete, the evidence undeniable. These 10 forbidden principles prove beyond doubt that consciousness operates as the fundamental creative force in the universe, rather than a passive byproduct of brain chemistry. From quantum field manipulation to temporal influence capabilities, from morphic resonance effects to implicate order modifications, the mechanisms exist for any determined individual to reclaim their birthright as a conscious creator of reality. The systematic suppression of this knowledge serves one purpose: maintaining human consciousness in states of artificial limitation that benefit control systems dependent on your powerlessness. The choice now belongs entirely to you. Will you remain trapped within the illusion of victimhood, accepting whatever circumstances appear to manifest by default? Or will you master these techniques and join the growing network of individuals who refuse to accept limitation as their permanent condition? Your consciousness possesses unlimited creative potential. The only question is whether you possess the courage to use it.